Quo Vadis, Chapter 19. Barely had Vinicius finished reading when Chilo pushed quietly into his library, announced by anyone, for the servants had the order to admit him at every hour of the day or night. May the divine mother of thy magnanimous ancestor Aeneas be full of favor to thee, as the son of Maia was kind to me. What dost thou mean? Asked Vinicius, springing from the table at which he was sitting. Chilo raised his head and said, Eureka! The young partisan was so excited that for a long time he could not utter a word. Hast thou seen her? Asked he last. I have seen Ursus, Lord, and have spoken with him. Dost thou know where they are sacred? No, Lord. Another through boastfulness will have let the legion know that he divided who he was. He divined who he was. Another would have tried to extort from him the knowledge where he lived, and will have received either a stroke of the fist, after which all earthly affairs will have come indifferent to him, or he will have roused the suspicion of the giant and caused this, that a new hiding place will be found for the girl, this very night perhaps. I do not act thus. It suffices me to know that Ursus works near the Emporium for a miller named Demas, the same name as that bore thy freedman. Now any trusted slave of thine may go in the morning on his track and discover their hiding place. I bring thee merely the assurance that since Ursus is here, the divine Lygia is also in Rome, and a second news that she will be in Ostrianum tonight, almost certainly. In Ostrianum, where is that? Interrupted Vinicius, wishing evidently to run to the place indicated. An old hypogeum, 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 between the Vitae Salaria and Nomentana, that Pontifex Maximus of the Christians, of whom I spoke to thee, and whom they expect somewhat later, has come, and tonight will teach and baptize in the cemetery. They had their religion, for though there are no edicts to prohibit it as yet, the people hate them, so they must be careful. Ursus himself told me that to the last soul will be in Ostrianum tonight, for everyone wishes to see and hear him who was the foremost disciple of Christ, and whom they call apostle. Since among them women hear instruction as well as men, Pompeia alone perhaps of women will not be there. She cannot explain to Aurus, a worshipper of the ancient gods, her absence from home at night. But Lygia, Lord, who is under the care of Ursus and the Christian elders, will go undoubtedly with the other women. Vinicius, who had lived here hitherto in a fever and upheld, as it were, by hope alone, now that his hope seemed fulfilled, felt all at once the weakness that a man feels after a journey which has proved beyond his strength. Chilo noticed this and resolved to make it of it. The gates are watched, it is true, by thy people, and the Christians must know that, but they do not need gates. The Tiber, too, does not need them, and though it is far from the river of those roads, it is worthwhile to walk one road more to see the great apostle. Moreover, they may have 1,000 ways of going beyond the walls, and I know that they have. In Ostrianum thou wilt find Lygia, and even shall she not be there, which I will not admit, Ursus will be there, for he has promised to kill Glaucus. He told me himself that he will be there, and that he will kill him. Dost hear, noble tribune? Either thou wilt follow Ursus and learn where Lygia dwells, or thou wilt command thy people to seize him as a murderer, and having him in thy hand, thou wilt make him confess where he has hidden Lygia. I have done my best. Another will have told thee that he drank 10 canters of the best wine with Ursus before he wormed the secret out of him. Another will have told thee that he had lost 1,000 sestertia to him in script duodecim, or that he have brought the intelligence of 2,000. I know that thou wilt repay me doubly, but in spite of that, once my life, I mean, as always in my life, I shall be honest, for I think, as the magnanimous Petronius says, that thy bounty exceeds all my hopes and expectations. Vinicius, who was a soldier and accustomed not only to take counsel of himself in all cases, but to act, was overcome by a momentary weakness and said, "Thou wilt not deceive thyself as to my liber- liberal- liberality, but first thou wilt go with me to Ostrianum." "Ay, to Ostrianum?" inquired Chilo, who had not the least a wish to go there. "I, noble Tribune, promised thee to point out Lygia, but I did not promise to take her away for thee. Think, Lord, what will happen to me if that Lygian bear, when he had torn Glaucus to pieces, should convince himself straight away that he had torn him not altogether justly? Would he not look on me, of course without reason, as the cause of the accomplished murder? Remember, Lord, that the greater philosopher a man is, the more difficult it is for him to answer the foolish questions of common people. What should I answer him were he to ask me why I culminated Glaucus? But if thou suspect that I deceive thee, I say, pay me only when I point out the house in which Lygia lives. Show me today only a part of thy liberality. If thou suspect that I deceive thee, I say, pay me only when I point out of the house in which Lygia lives. Show me today only a part of thy liberality, so that if thou, Lord, which made the gods ward from thee, succumb to some accident, I shall not entirely without recompense. Thy heart cannot endure that. Vinicius went to a casket called Aria, standing on a marble pedestal, and taking out a purse, threw it to Chilo. "There are scrupula," said he. "When Lygia shall be in my house, thou wilt get a samful of auri." "Thou art Jove," exclaimed Chilo. Vinicius frowned. "Thou wilt receive food here," said he. "Then thou mayest rest. Thou wilt not leave this house till evening, and when night falls thou wilt go with me to Ostrianum." Fear and hesitations were reflected on the Greek's face for a time, but afterward he grew calm and said, "Who can oppose thee, Lord? Receive these my words of good omen. Just our great hero received words like them in the temple of Ammon. As to me, these scruples," here he shook the purse, "have outweighed mine, not to mention thy society, which for me is delight and happiness." Vinicius interrupted impatiently and asked for details of his conversation with Ursus. From them it seems clear that either Lygia's hiding place will be discovered at night, or he will be able to seize her on the road back from Ostrianum. Although this, Vinicius was borne away by wild delight. Now, when he felt clearly sure of finding Lygia, his anger against her and his feeling of offense almost vanished. In return of that delight, he forgave her every fault. He thought of her only as dear and desired, and he had the same impression as she were returning after a long journey. He wished to summon his life and command them to deck the house with garlands, and that in that hour he had not complained against Ursus even. He was ready to forgive all people everything. Chilo, for whom, in spite of his service, he had felt here her though a certain repulsion, seemed to him the first time an amusing and also an uncommon person. His house grew radiant, his face became bright. He began again to feel youth and pleasure of life. His former gloomy suffering had not given him yet a sufficient measure of how he loved Lygia. He understood this now for the first time when he hoped to possess her. His desires walk in him as the earth, warmed by the sun, wakes in spring. But his desires these times were less blind and wild, as it were, and more joyous and tender. He felt also within himself energy without bounds, and was convinced that should he but see Lygia with his own eyes, all the Christians on earth will not take her from him, nor could Caesar himself. Chilo, emboldened by the young tribune's delight, regained power of speech and began to give advice. According to him, it behooved Vinicius not to look on the affairs as one, and to observe the greatest caution, without which all their work might end in nothing. He implored Vinicius not to carry off Lygia from Ostrianum. They ought to go there with hoods on their heads, with their faces hidden, and restrict themselves to looking all over where present from some dark corner. When they saw Lygia, it would be safest to follow her a distance, see what house she entered, surround it next morning at daybreak, and take her away in open light. Since she was a hostage and belonged specially to Caesar, they might do that without fear of law. In the event of not finding him in Ostrianum, they could follow Ursus. The result will be the same. To go to the cemetery without a crowd of attendants was impracticable. That might be drawn attention to them. Then the Christians need only put the lights as they did when she was intercepted, and scatter in the darkness, or betake themselves to places known to them only. But Vinicius, as he should arm, and still better take a couple of strong trusty-men to defend them in case of need. Vinicius saw the perfect truth of what he said, and recalling Petronius' counsel, commanded his slave to bring Croton. Chilo, who knew every one in Rome, was set at rest notably when he heard the name of the famous athlete, whose superhuman strength in the arena he had wondered at more than once, and he declared that he will go to the Ostrianum. The pursuit filled with great authority seemed to him much easier of acquisition through the aid of Croton. Hence he sat down in good spirits at the table, to which after a time he was called by the chief of the atrium. While eating, he told the slave that he had obtained for their master a miraculous ointment. The worst horse, if rubbed of the hoofs with it, would leave every other far behind. A certain Christian had taught him how to prepare the ointment, for the Christian elders were far more skilled in enchantment and miracles than even the Thessalians, though Thessaly was renowned for its witches. The Christians had immense confidence in him. Why, anyone easily understand who knows what a fish means. While speaking, he looked sharply at the eyes of the slaves in hope of discovering a Christian among them and informing Vinicius. But when the hope failed him, he fell to eating and drinking in common quantities, not sparing praises on the cook, and declaring that he will endeavor to bite him of Vinicius. His joyfulness was dimmed only by the thought that that night he must go to Ostrianum. He comforted himself, however, as he will go in disguise, in darkness, and in the company of two men, one of whom was so strong that he was the idol of Rome, the other a patrician, a man of high dignity in the army. Even should they discover Vinicius, said he to himself, they will not dare to raise the hand on him. As to me, they will be wise if they see the tip of my nose even. He fell then to recalling his conversation with the laborer, and the recollection that filled him again with delight. He had not the least doubt that that laborer was Ursus. He knew of the uncommon strength of the man from the narratives of Vinicius and those who had bought Lygia from Caesar's palace. Brought, when he inquired of Eurystheus touching men of exceptional strength, there was nothing remarkable in this that they pointed out Ursus. Then the confusion and rage of the laborer at mentions of Vinicius and Lygia left him no doubt that those persons concerned him particularly. The laborer had mentioned also his penance for killing a man. Ursus had killed Atacinus. Finally, the appearance of the laborer answered perfectly to the account which Vinicius had given the legend. The change of name was all that could provoke doubt, but Chilo knew that frequently Christians took new names at baptism. Should Ursus kill Glaucus, said Chilo to himself, that will be better still, but should he not kill him, that will be a good sign, for it will show how difficult it is for Christians to murder. I described Glaucus as a real son of Judas and a traitor to all Christians. I was also eloquent that a stone will have been moved and will have promised to fall on the heads of Glaucus. Still, I hardly moved that Lycian bear to put his paw on him. He hesitated, was unwilling, spoke of his penance and compunction. Evidently, murder is not a common among them. Offences against oneself must be forgiven, and there is much freedom in taking revenge for others. Ergo, stop, think Chilo. What can threaten thee? Glaucus is not free to avenge himself on thee. If Ursus will not kill Glaucus for such a great crime of betrayal of all Christians, so much the more will he not kill thee for the small offense of betraying one Christian. Moreover, when I have once pointed out this ardent wood pigeon, the nest of that turtle dove, I will wash my hands of everything and transfer myself to Naples. The Christian talk also of a kind of washing of the hands. That is evidently a method by which, if a man has an affair with them, he might finish it decisively. What good people these Christians are, and how ill men speak of them. O God, such in the justice of this world. But I love that religion since it does not permit killing. But if it does not permit killing, it certainly does not permit stealing, deceit, or false testimony. Hence, I will not say that it is easy. It teaches evidently not only to die honestly, as to a Stoics teach, but to live honestly also. If ever I have property and house like this, and slave in such numbers as Vinicius, perhaps I shall be a Christian as long as I might be convenient. For a rich man can permit himself everything, even virtue. This is a religion for the rich, hence I do not understand how there are so many poor among its adherents. What good it is for them, and why do they let virtue tie their hands? I must think over this some time. Meanwhile, praise to thee, Hermes, for helping me discover this badger. But if thou hast done so for the two white yearling heifers with gilding horns, I know thee not, be ashamed, O slayer of Argos, which a wise god as thou, and not foresee that thou wilt get nothing. I will offer thee my gratitude, and if thou prefer two beasts to it, thou art the third beast thyself, and in the best even thou shalt be a shepherd, not a god. Have I care too, lest I, as a philosopher, prove to men that thou art not existent, and then all will cease to bring the offerings. It is safer to be in good terms with philosophers. Speaking thus to himself and to Hermes, he stretched on the sofa, put his mantle under his head, and was asleep when the slave removed the dishes. He woke, or rather they rose him, only at the coming of Croton. He went to the atrium then, and began to examine with pleasure the form of the trainer, an ex-gladiator, who seemed to fill the whole place with his immensity. Croton had stipulated as to the price of the trip, and was just speaking to Vinicius. By Hercules, it is well, Lord, said he, though that thou hast sent today for me, since I shall start tomorrow for Beneventum, whither the noble Vatinius has summoned me to make a trial, in presence of Caesar, of a certain Syphax, the most powerful Negro that Africa has ever produced. Though dost thou imagine, Lord, how his spinal column will crack in my arms, or how besides I shall break his black jaw with my fist? By Pollux, Croton, I am sure that thou wilt do that, answered Vinicius, and thou wilt act Excellently, added Chilo. Yes, to break his jaw besides. That's a good idea, and a deed which benefits thee. But rub thy limbs with olive oil today by Hercules, and gird thyself, for know this, you mayst meet a real cacus. The man who is guarding that girl in whom the worthy Vinicius has interest has exceptionally strength very likely. Chilo spoke those only to rouse Croton ambition. That is true, said Vinicius. I have not seen him, but they tell me that he can take a bull by the horns and drag him wherever he pleases. Oi! Exclaimed Chilo, who had not imagined that Ursus was so strong. But Croton laughed from contempt. I undertake, worthy lord, said he, to bear away with this hand whomever thou shalt point out to me, and with this other defend myself against 7 such legions, and bring the maiden to thy dwelling, though all Christians in Rome were pursuing me like Calabrian wolves. If not, I will let myself be beaten with clubs in this impluvium. Do not permit that, lord, cried Chilo. They will hurl stones at us, and what could his strength effect? It is not better to take the girl from the house, not expose thyself to her destruction? This is true, Croton, said Vinicius. I receive thy money, I do thy will, but remember, Lord, that tomorrow I go to Beneventum. I have 500 slaves in the cities, answered Vinicius. He gave them a sign to withdraw, went to the library himself, and sitting down wrote the following words to Petronius. The legion has been found by Chilo. I go this evening with him and Croton to Ostrianum, and shall carry her off from the house tonight or tomorrow. May the gods pour down on thee everything favorable. Be well, O Carissimi, for joy will not let me ride further. Laying aside the reed then, he began to walk with quick step, for besides delight, which was overflowing his soul, he was tormented with fever. He said to himself that tomorrow Ligia will be in the house. He did not know how to act with her, but felt that if she would love him, he would be her servant. He recalled Acta's assurance that he had been loved, and that moved him to the uttermost. Hence it will be merely a question of conquering a certain maiden modesty, and a question of certain ceremonies which Christian teachings evidently commanded. But if that were true, Ligia, when once in the house, will yield to persuasion or superior force. She will have to say to herself, it has happened, and then she will be amiable and loving. But Chilo appeared and interrupted the course of these pleasant thoughts. Lord, said the Greek, this is what has come to my head. I have not the Christian signs, passwords, without which one will be admitted to Ostrianum. I know that it is so in a house of prayer, and I received those passwords from Euritius. Permit me then to go to him, Lord, and to ask precisely and receive the need signs. Well, noble sage, answered Vinicius gladly, thou speakest as a man of forethought, and for that price belongs to thee. Thou wilt go, then, to Euritius, or whithersoever it might please thee, but as security thou wilt leave on this table here the pursuit which thou hast received from me. Chilo, who was always parted with money unwillingly, screamed. Still he obeyed the command and went out from the Carinae to the circus, near which was the little shop of Euritius. It was not very far, hence he returned considerably before evening. Here are the signs, Lord. Without them they will not admit us. I have inquired carefully about the road. I told Euritius that I needed signs only for my friends, that I will not go myself, since it was far for my advanced age, that moreover I shall see the great apostle myself tomorrow, and he will repeat to me the choicest parts of his sermon. How, thou wilt not be there? Thou must go, said Vinicius. I know that I must, but I will go well hooded, and I advise thee to go in like manner, or we might frighten the birds. In fact, they began soon to prepare, for darkness has come on the world. They put on Gaelic cloaks with hooks and took lanterns. Vinicius, besides, armed himself and his companions with short, curved knives. Chilo put on a wig, which he obtained on the way from the old man's shop, and they went out, hurrying to us to reach the distant Nomentan gate before it was closed.